So here we have the implementation of having a parent object, which is the user, having several children, which are the websites, referring to the parent, right? Using this foreign key, this reference of the websites referring to their parent user. Yes. We could have alternatively stored the websites as the children of the user, embedded inside of the user, right? So instead of having had two separate collections, instead of having had a user collection and a website collection, we could have had all these websites, these three or four websites that were created for that user. It could have instead lived inside of the user object, right? As an array of objects, an array of websites. That alternative representation is called the embedded representation, right? Embedded instance representation in JSON, in Mongo. And Mongo gives you a chance to do one or the other, or both. You could choose to do both. It's kind of weird if you do both. You typically do one or the other. In this case, we're going to do both, right? Because we already have the reference representation which each one of the children point back to the parent. Yes? We have that implementation. Let's look at the other implementation. Now that you would implement both, typically you choose one or the other. I would say that for the assignment, you would do perhaps the websites have references back to their users. Pages also have references back to their websites. Yes? But for the widgets, I think a better implementation is for the widgets to be embedded inside of their pages. Instead of having a separate website, a separate widgets collection, right? The widgets would be embedded as an array inside of their pages. That would make much easier just sorting the widgets inside of their pages. Okay? So I'm going to do it for websites, but this would also work for the widgets as well. Okay? So to do that, we're going to need to go back to the schema for the user. So let's go back to this user. And what we're going to do here is that in the schema for the user, we're going to add a couple of things here. Right? We're going to add the fact that not only do I have a username, password, first name, last name, whatnot, we can also have an array of websites, okay, embedded in here. All right. So to do this, we're going to need to tell it what is it that I'm going to store in there. I need to tell it that we're going to store a website schema in there, okay, with a name, description, the visits and whatnot, right? So to do that, we're going to have to load the schema. We're going to load the schema with a var website. We're going to require. We're going to go up and then down to website and then website schema. There it is. Okay. So here's two things. You can either embed an entire object, right, embedded in here, or this could have been again a reference to the website that ultimately live in a separate collection, right? So notice how many options you have here. But the interesting one is embedding the entire object in here. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Okay. So to do this, to implement this, what we need to do is when we create the website, we need to also embed it inside of this array. Right? Where do we create it? We create it in the website model. This is where we create it, right? Right here. Website model, this is where we create the website. The create of the website. And we create it right, here's where we create it. Yes? And what we want to be able to do is, after we create the website, what we'd like to be able to do is get a hold of that website that we just created, website. Right. So notice that I'm handling the promise right away. I'm not sending it back to the service. The service is calling this, right? The service just gave me a website object. Yes. Give me a website object, and I'm ready to put it in the database. Yes, right. After I put it in the database, I want to handle myself right here. I want to handle the that new website that I just created, because I want to put it inside of that array of the user. For that, I need the user model here. Right? Because I'm going to need to have to do something like, hey, user model, right? Find me that user. Once I find that user, because presumably the user exists, right? Once I find that user, grab me the array of websites, and I want to push this new website object that I just created. I want to push it in there, and then I want to back save it into the database, right? So to do that, I need the user model. So let's grab the user model. So I have the website model, var user model, and I'm going to have to require it, and I'm going to have to go up. Where am I? Website. I'm going to have to go up further, maybe. Models, there it is. Down to user, and down to user model. There it is. I have the model right there. Now that I have the model, I can find the user by ID, because I have the ID. It's in the developer ID, right? It's a developer ID here, right? So I can find user, find me a user by ID. Presumably we have that. I'm going to pass as argument the website.developer ID, the developer ID. Okay? Oops, wait a minute, no, that's not a function. I'm going to find that developer ID. Once I have that developer, I can handle the callback right here. There's a user. There's my user. Okay, and what I like to be able to do is say user dot websites push the website that we created here. This website that I had right here. Okay, to grab this website, I'm going to have to store it in a local variable. So var new website. Right now it's null. I'm going to have to store it here. So new website. So that so I'm putting it at a higher scope, right? So I can grab it down here. I want to store it right there. I want to push it in there. Once it's pushed, I want to save it back to the database. I want to now that I've added this new website, I want to put it back in the database. So let's do that. We're going to do user.save. Save goes back and saves it and updates this user object back in the database, and that's what I'm going to return. Right? All this time, the service hasn't received anything. Right? It's calling all these updates and inserts, and then finding the user, and then now back saving back in the database, right? And the server's like, okay, I'm waiting here, right? This is what's going to resolve the wait for the service waiting on this, right? So let's try it. Let's see if this blows up. Let's restart the server. Actually, website over here, I don't have access to it, so it would be new website .developer ID. We get the user save. Let's try it again. Let's restart the server. Let's refresh. Notice that none of the old websites would be in there, right? And so our user currently is R2. I think that's the one we're using, R2, right? So let's look at the users right now. So here's R2. Notice that R2 has no websites at all, right? So let's just look at that one user. So let's look at the one who has a username. I just want to look at username R2. So it's just that one user, right? I just want to see what happens to it. Let's restart the server. Let's refresh, and let's create a new website for R2. New website. Create. Let's see if this blows up. Okay, it looks like it was created. Let's look at Let's look at the database. Okay, notice what happened. See that? Right, notice that R2 now has a new field in there called websites that has the embedded object in there. See that? Including the developer ID, the name, and any other field would be in here. Right? But notice that this is redundant, right? It's redundant because it already lives in the collection of websites. Yes? Right? So you won't typically do both things. Put it in the collection in separate collection and embedded. Now, typically, you would choose one or the other, right, where you would push it inside of the array of a parent object, or you would choose to have a reference back in a separate collection. Right? It's like if you're using Java or .NET, right? Typically, in those languages, you don't have foreign keys typically, right? You have parents having references to their children. You would have a user having an array list of websites, and then the websites having an array list of pages, and then the pages having an array list of widgets, right? That's how you would model it in an object-oriented language. Typically, you wouldn't have websites having a reference to the user, and then the page having references to a website, and then the widgets having references back to the page. You can, but you typically don't, right? Unless you want to have, I don't know, some way to navigate backwards and forwards, right, from an instance, right? From a user's navigate to the list of all the websites, then the pages and the widgets, and then backwards again from, like a doubly linked list, right? So typically you would choose one or the other. More commonly, it is a parent having an array of children as opposed to the parent having reference to the parent. So there it is. So this is an optional implementation, right, where you can have embedded objects instead of other objects, right? And this one would be this strategy would be, I think, the better for having pages having widgets inside of them, right? So that they would make it easier to sort, right, and move widgets around if they are an array of widgets, right, because they are in the correct position, right, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? It's easier to do that. Instead, if they're spread over in a collection along with many other widgets, it would make it much, much harder to sort. Yes? Right, so that's just a suggestion. All right, I'm going to leave it here.